I'm a bit of a djent head myself, so I wasn't as fazed by the dark years of oversaturation with cookie-cutter bands and their down-tuned sounds. Unfortunately, during this period of time, some very noteworthy acts were, and remain, slept on. One in particular I would like to highlight is the progressive metal outfit from France, known as Uneven Structure. All of their discography deserves a listen, but for this I'm going to focus on one of my favorites and their 2011 debut album, Februus. Every video there is some word or name I hope I pronounce right, and I just have to trust the interviews and tools I searched.
Februus.
While the noteworthy characteristics of djent are present, palm mutes, polymeters, rhythmic focus, syncopation, clean and harsh vocals, etc., I assert listening to their work as progressive metal would be the appropriate state of mind. The song structures and lyrical content often wind and expand, exploring philosophical and hard sci-fi concepts. A quote on the Basic Records Bandcamp page describes the album as a 13-piece concept spanning across 2 discs, mixing lush soundscapes with fierce polymetric metal. Think Pink Floyd's creativity meets Meshuggah's brutality with a side serving of Devin Townsend's progressive charm. Full disclosure, I'm terrible at figuring out what a given song or album is about just from reading the lyrics, especially when it is abstract. Once I know the subject matter, I'm better at connecting the dots, finding themes and threads, connective tissue. That said, for this album, I had to heavily rely on the Prognotes analysis by Eden Kupermintz, which I will cite and link in the description. Not to say this is definitively what the album is about, it's all subjective, but this acts as enough of a foundation for me to build on. Without this, I would have no idea where to even begin with these lyrics. I mean, look at this, I need a dictionary for every other word. Eden mentions some album influences include the 2006 Darren Aronofsky film The Fountain, as well as the psychology of Carl Jung. Starting off, I want to take a moment to recognize just how excellent the artwork for the cover is. It's a wondrous encapsulation of the beauty and magnificence of life in space. It has a great sense of scale. I find it to be enchanting, comforting, and also a bit haunting. It also features an uneven structure, if you will. Immediately, a standout feature of the album is a little thing called atmosphere. If I had to describe the production quality for this album in one word, it would be crisp. Man, things cut through perfectly. There's no muddiness, the melodies are bright, riffs are punchy and groovy, vocals are clearly discernible. Guitarist Igor Omodei formed Uneven Structure with bassist Benoît Friedrich in 2007. When discussing their formation and artistic vision, he mentions, "We got into electronic music where there's so much emphasis on textures and sonics, and we kind of fell in love with this precise sound. At that point, we wanted to mix them together, the brutality and chaos of mathcore and metalcore with the lush sound of electronic music." I have found references to perfectionism being part of their writing process for multiple albums. Guitarist Pereira stated, "We've been constantly rewriting Februus over the past 2 years with the aim of turning it into something really special and soulful. We wanted to be sure that we had put the best of us in it, and I think we've been successful at doing that." Regarding their album La Partition, Omodei mentions, "We felt like we were happy with it, and then we changed our mind when we listened to the whole album." Omodei is candid about the band's unease about bringing out a record that didn't hit the mark. "We felt some kind of pressure to deliver something as good as people expected, but we were also trying to catch up with time." The name Februus is from the ancient Roman and Etruscan god of purification. Put a pin in that for later. The conceptual narrative can be split into 3 segments. First, we have tracks Awaken, Frost, and Hail. Februus starts with truly one of my favorite openings to an album. There is some sort of delay which is used to make this echoey effect, which lets the notes ring out. It has this crispness that reminds me of winter. Tesseract is one of the only other examples I've heard that captures this as well. I asked my resident music expert, and also co-host on the Soundcheck podcast, to check it out for his description of this intro. He thinks it uses delay reverb with some modulation to make it glisten, possibly them using a single coil to really separate that string sound, or even layered with an acoustic guitar. After the peaceful intro comes the first recognitions of the cosmos in the form of rushing riffs and screams. And what I'm sure was a conscious choice, the first clean vocals are delivered with the lines, "Freed from the womb, an overwhelming light surrounds everything," signaling the beginning of life for our narrator. Imagine not being born from a womb, but thrust into a fiery quantum foam, the energy and chaos of rapid formation. Not only that, but the external world is forming as the hero develops their internal self. Digging into this album reminds me of a previous album retrospective of mine, which is the Ocean Collective's Pelagial, which also features a sort of dual narrative between a physical hero's journey with a simultaneous internal psychic journey. I commend vocalist Matthieu for being able to belt out complicated lyrics, reminiscent of Meshuggah's Jens Kidman, while still remaining distinguishable. Februus is constructed and best listened to in one continuous session, which is noticeable in the first song transition from Awaken to Frost. Tracks Frost and Hail are the most tumultuous. They are the loudest and most aggressive due to the narrator forming the world and struggling to find their bearings. Lost in a torrent, the hero must create patterns to form stability. Their only escape is through actualizing their world and self along with it. The lyrical imagery is profound throughout the album. The violence and magnificence of world forming, the necessary chaos before life can embark. I'm not sure if I'm reading too much into this. This may be getting too into the weeds, but I'll toss it in anyway. In the song Frost, the vocals hold the word frost in the lyrics, frost surrounding everything, freezing it, possibly portraying the inescapable pervasiveness of the ice. Also in the lyrics, as the pain slowly resorbs and lets the channels free, screaming resumes at the word free, opening the channels, which brings the chaos again. It does seem intentional. Hail provides experience through pain. It is difficult to bear, but it is often the most formative. With endurance, the hero's world becomes more real. For the second portion, we have Exmersion, Buds, Awe, and Quittance. Exmersion is the first of more ambient soundscapes to come. The definition for immersion is putting someone or something in a liquid, or it's also deep mental involvement. Exmersion is not a word. Trust me, I did the research, I Googled it. Regardless, to act as the antonym of immersion, Exmersion could be multiple things. Exiting a liquid, the beginning of life, maybe even astral projection, exiting oneself, or exiting the shell of a former self. What about taking the next step in evolution? I'm inclined to believe this given the next song, Buds, which is where the primordial soup begins. Buds introduces life outside of the narrator. The drums lower the tempo, scaling things down a bit. It's back to basics, like early life. The hero is now affecting physical matter, once again attempting to establish patterns, something we find comfort in. The lack of purpose is a nightmare to most. They need a justification for existence. The end of the song explodes once again. It is a metal album after all. This time bursting with new life or purpose. That drop at 5 minutes 41 seconds gets me every time. This song grew on me over time and has become one of my favorites. I find Matthieu's clean vocals to be pleasingly hypnotic. Similar to Hail, Awe sonically kicks the door down to announce its presence. Where Hail was chaos and disorder, Awe is chaos from order, established by the hero. Buds mentioned a Tower of Babel-like structure. This is continued upon with the following tracks Awe and Quittance. Awe is relatively brief and sees the hero wielding power atop this structure, evoking awe, finally finding some sense in the uncertainty. And yet, this structure is not sound. This is not all it was meant to be. Desire and power erode the illusion of well-being. Quittance sees the hero's disillusionment in what they've created, a need to reduce themselves down to bare essentials, evoking a philosophical concept of foundationalism where one must break apart all that one knows and find the core on which everything rests. You must know your own foundational core, all else can return later. You gotta love the catchy vocal hook in this one. This is not. As mentioned before, this leads us back to the titular Februus, god of purification. For the final segment, we have tracks Limbo, Plentitude, and Finale. Limbo is a reprieve, some space ambience, or an instrumental sojourn, as Eden on Prognotes more eloquently states. Plentitude builds up for 3.5 minutes before unleashing its last lyrical content regarding the story. The definition for Plentitude is the condition of being full or complete. Having destroyed the physical world and unshackled their internal self, the hero returns to a state similar to the beginning of the album, this time with a different perspective, one of enlightenment, better insight to themselves. Eden mentions this is seen with the lyric mentioning illumination, with illumination being a metaphor for knowledge. The microcosm and macrocosm are united into one being, something that is full and complete. Upon the delivery of the final lyrics, collapses together to commute into Plentitude, we are thrust into a flurry of rapid movement. Finale's riff is a leitmotif from Awe. In Awe, during the lyrics, escaping the uncertainness of these realms, there is a riff that returns here in Finale. Whereas during Awe, the hero thought they were at the apex of their power, this riff returns in Finale where the hero stripped all away and found true enlightenment. Plentitude and Finale are a triumphant finish to the hero's journey. What began with chaos and fear ends with understanding, acceptance, and peace. This riff drives on for half the track, providing a pattern that is so sought after until it dissolves into the white noise of space. But that's not all. For years, I listened to this album being completely unaware that there is, in fact, a second disc. It consists of 3 great ambient soundscapes titled Dew Upon Boundless Shapes, Winds from Untold Memories, and Promise from Our Early Days, altogether amounting to 34 minutes worth of material. These act as a continuation of the original nascent state of the universe. I lack the knowledge to glean from their ambience and drones, so I couldn't tell you if they have more narrative substance to offer. There are moments in the tracks where you can faintly hear droning vocalizations from Matthieu. They aren't prominent, they are another instrument now spread amongst the cosmos. The lack of vocals from Finale onward allow the listener time for reflection. One last tangent before I wrap this up. I made a connection between some favorite progressive metal albums of mine, with Uneven Structure's Februus, Tesseract's Altered State, and the Ocean Collective's Pelagial. They all start off blistering, then after an epiphany end with slower, methodical pacing, and sometimes also with a returning leitmotif riff. Like Thoughts and Understanding, the epiphany is clearer. It's more stable. Acceptance is relatively more tranquil. Another retrospective done. Woohoo! I'm not going to give a score. These videos aren't timely enough to be reviews. I'm looking back on favorite albums to hopefully bring them new listeners or lyrical and production insight to fans. Also check out their album La Partition. I easily could have made a video about it as well. La Partition picks up conceptually where Februus left off, telling the story of a man witnessing chaos all around him. Sonically, it leans more progressive and even a bit jazzy, as their current drummer since 2015, Arnaud Verrier, described. The members want to distance themselves from the djent label and more towards prog. For a band that has taken their time between releases, striving for perfection and avoiding genre trope pitfalls, I look forward to hearing what they have in store. Thank you for watching.